All right, good morning, everybody. It is 10 a.m. Pacific time, and we are going to go ahead and get started with our webinar today. It's a crazy new world. We got all kinds of stuff going on, and so we haven't done a ton of webinars, but we really wanted to make sure that we got out all the information that we've got here, and all the sort of stuff that we're thinking about, ways that we can really bring the business owner community together, because it's unprecedented times and lots of crazy stuff going on. So we're just going to go ahead and get started as quickly as we can here. So let's see if I can get these things moving. There we go. All right, so my name's Matt Garrett. I'm the founder and CEO of TGG. We are an outsourced accounting firm. We build accounting departments for small businesses. And really the key here is our mission. Our mission is to make business owners' lives better through excellent financial management. And we do that daily by delivering accurate information timely, so that business owners can make good decisions. And that's exactly what we're trying to do with this. There's just a flurry of stuff going on here with all these questions. These are just a handful of the questions that I've gotten in the last 24 hours. And it's pretty nuts. Right now, what we've got is, the stock market is rallying at the moment, but they're anticipating some sort of congressional bill, which was supposed to come Sunday. Then maybe, who knows when it's coming and what it's going to do. What we do know is some of the negative stuff that's already happened. So what we can look towards is to try to figure out what's going to happen in our economy is what's happened in the past. And what we've got is like the situation in China. If you take a look at this chart, what you see here is that China literally fell off a cliff. Now, China's communist, and they quite literally quarantined the entire city and didn't let anyone leave and didn't let anyone out of their houses. And that's how they contained the virus. But even with one city in a country of billions of people, they still had this massive drop in economic output. And in fact, their GDP, by some estimates, went down as much as 11.8% in the first quarter. So we're definitely headed to some kind of economic slowdown as we see the entire world really just stopping. And so that's what we can expect. What does that mean? Well, that means recession for sure. And how do we know it? Well, we've got clients that are in the hotel business. Last Monday, one of our clients laid off 4,500 people. The hotels were shut down. What we've tried to do is work with them to get back into working with the government to maybe open up hotels as shelters and hotels as hospitals or makeshift hospitals for people who get the virus. So these are all things that you can take something and it looks really negative on the surface, but it may be possible to shift it. And that's really what we're trying to do and trying to figure out. Same thing if you look at event planning. Obviously, all that stuff just stopped with all this. The business just stopped, but maybe there is a new way to shift. I just saw a statistic that the billion-dollar healthcare industry has moved virtual in a week. We went from going to yoga classes every week to now having virtual yoga classes. And I don't know about you, but I've got a room set up in my house now with a TV, and I get to broadcast via my iPad my daily yoga class. And I get in there and do it, and I'm pretending that I'm doing it with a bunch of people because I'm sitting there watching a video. So there's the old way of doing things is gone. A lot of the economic impacts are going to be very, very negative, but every business has a chance to survive regardless of what industry you're in. Even things like event centers. Again, one of my good friends is on the board of a nonprofit event center here, and obviously they shut down. But what are they going to use that facility for in the future? How can they make sure they preserve capital so they come back stronger? The real problem behind all of this, and the real problem behind what you see going on in the world, is we've never experienced this kind of a slowdown with this kind of speed. We've experienced slowdowns before. We've experienced lots of recessions, and we know how those things work. But the 08-09 recession was really one that stretched from the middle of 2007 all the way through to the depths of the recession, which weren't really there until late 2009, almost a 2-year time span between which you started to feel a recession to where you got to the bottom. This is going to be much different. What you're seeing is millions of people being laid off. I don't know if you guys watched 60 Minutes this last weekend, but there was a really interesting piece on it around unemployment. And they said that the Connecticut unemployment claims on a weekly basis are typically around 2,000 claims. Last week, there were 72,000 claims. That's unprecedented in terms of the speed at which things are changing. And that's really what we want to focus on. How do we deal with that? So what are some of the things that the government has done so far? Well, we have disaster loans. In our office, we've got a handful of experts who are really good at SBA loans. And we have obviously done a lot of work in the last couple of weeks on disaster loans. These are things that you need to apply for, but there are opportunities for a lot of small business if you're impacted by this virus, which almost all of us are. The next thing that's happened if you own real estate is a moratorium on evictions. Now, this primarily relates to homeowners and renters, but I think there might be an extension of this to also tenants and landlords. So we've got to start to think about what this is going to do. Either if you're a landlord or if you're on the tenant side, it's going to have an impact. Then the Defense of Production Act. This was something that obviously the president put in place to make sure that we could get ventilators made, face masks, things like that, and force production. But even with that, you've got to think about manufacturing. If you're in manufacturing, maybe shifting to some of that stuff makes some sense. And lastly, we got some payroll tax relief, although it really wasn't much for business owners. What it was payroll tax, the employer side of sick leave, the OASDI does not have to be paid. So that was a little bit of a benefit, but honestly, not too much. So unfortunately, the government really hasn't done much yet. Now, again, we're expecting a bill today. And what are we expecting? Well, we're expecting some kind of a $2 trillion package with some stuff for individuals and some stuff for businesses. The checks that go to people, again, that's sort of up in the air and being negotiated. We'll have to check and see what's going on. But the thing we really expect here for business is nearly $500 billion in loans. I will tell you, I'm not sure that that's enough. We'll have to see how that goes, and I'm not sure how it's going to get administered. But the critical thing is that you're right on top of this when it happens so that you're first in line, whether it's the disaster loans or anything else. Get in line as fast as you can. Get your applications in because your business, if it depends on this cash for survival, really needs to be working at full speed to get that money in. Whew. So all these crazy times, all this stuff flying at us, how do we survive this? What I want to focus on is not just how we survive, but at the end, I also want to focus on how we thrive in this environment. Because I really believe that we can all survive in this and that every single one of our businesses in one shape or form in this industry, in our industry, is going to survive. We want to make sure that you're one of us, one of the survivors in this whole thing. So the first thing we've got to do is build a crisis team. Then we got to do some disaster planning and forecasting, scenario planning, look at collections planning, really make sure we're examining our supply chain, look at our legal strategy overall. Hoard cash. Can't say that enough. You've got to hoard cash, and then look at cost cutting. These are the 8 things that we're going to take a look at today that are all very tactical, implementable strategies for you and your business to make sure that you not only survive, but thrive in this new environment. So let's talk about a crisis team. When you're thinking about your crisis team, you have to put together advisors that are going to help you make decisions, because decisions are going to happen like that. And they're going to have to be made very quickly. So you have to have timely and accurate information to do it from all of these sources. And we'll start at the top. Business, bankruptcy, and collections attorney. Want to make sure that those people are involved because there are legal issues in every decision that you make. We all have contracts and things that need to be reviewed immediately. Next, your CFO and accounting team. You've got to make sure you understand what's coming. We're going to talk a lot about different forecasting and planning that you can do with your accounting team, but that's a critical piece of this. Your banker is also a critical piece of this. Make sure you're having conversations. Make sure you're in connection with your banker, because the government and the FDIC, for example, right now is really pushing banks to support business, which is a total change from where we've been for the last 10 years, where this crazy regulation was pushing down on companies. Now we're getting a lot of news out of the banks that the FDIC and others are telling them to lessen some regulations and really focus on helping support business. The other one you need to focus on is your CPA. Granted, they've pushed out the time when you need to actually pay your taxes to July 15th from April 15th, but that doesn't mean that they've pushed out the time you need to file. So you still need to file on time, and then you need to talk to your CPA about what are the different things that the government's doing that could reduce your taxes, because if you have a lower tax expense, clearly you can put that money into your business, hiring, retaining employees, etc. Your personal financial planner is really important in this. I know for me, if I'm stressed about my personal financial situation, there's no way that I'm as good as I could be for my company. I'm not as good a leader. I'm not as good of an individual. I'm not as good of a teammate. So make sure that you've got some time with your personal financial planner, or that you are doing personal financial projections to make sure that you know you're personally safe. Next is your insurance agent. And I put a star next to this because in many cases, this is going to be important. We're going to talk about this. And your business coach, Vistage chair, community coach, whoever that is, these are important people because of the psychological benefits, not just the business benefits. But it's really important not to feel alone in this. One of the big reasons that we're doing this here and doing this webinar is so that you understand you're not alone. We're all in business together, and we all have to kind of band together at this time to make this stuff work. One of the stories that I can tell you is that at TGG, we're all getting up at 7:30 in the morning every single morning, and we're meeting for 10 minutes to do breathing exercises. And I have a bunch of accountants, so I have a bunch of people in my office who go, breathing exercises? What is this? We don't want to do breathing exercises. And it's really not about the breathing exercises. It's about routine. It's about making sure that when we all work remotely, like you can see I'm working from my house today, that we're all still feeling together and connected. So that business coach, that some sort of facilitator can help you feel connected to the rest of that business community. Any of those kind of people are invaluable in this time to help keep your psyche up, to help keep your attitude up in these really tough times. So let's talk about disaster planning forecasting. After you've got your crisis team set up, you need to make sure that you're planning for what might happen. What happens if my revenue goes down by 25%? What about 50%? What if it's 75% down? What does that look like? Who am I going to keep? Who am I going to cut? What products can I shelve? What products do I need to keep and focus on? What services do I need to stop providing? All of these things need to be built into a forecast with numbers, with objective metrics and boundaries, so you know when you're going to make decisions based on certain circumstances. That will give you a lot of peace of mind. That will make you feel a lot better. Next thing you want to do is a 13-week cash flow forecast. This is standard. A lot of people have done these in the past, but when you're in these tight situations, you want to make sure that you're managing this at least weekly, and some people are going to need to manage it daily. What are the inflows and outflows of cash? What checks can I cut? What do I need to make sure that I just got deposits in or checks in from my customers? Next thing is you really want to review all the customers for payment terms. Segregate them out into A, AA, and AAA customers. Who are your best customers that you know are going to pay? Who are customers that are in the middle that you think are probably going to pay? And who are customers that might be in an industry or might be about to shut down, and you need to really focus and make sure you're either you're cutting off services or products to them, or you're working with them on payment terms to make sure that they can survive this with you. When you're thinking about collections planning, one of the key things you've got to make sure you do is collect faster. We've been talking about this for years and years. And the other thing that one of my CFOs, Janine, said to me the other day, and I thought it was spot on, she said, Matt, you know what? The stuff that you're advocating we should probably do this in a normal economy anyway. And that's right. These are all things that are not necessarily rocket science, but they are things that are going to help you survive today. And frankly, on the back end of this thing are going to make your business that much better as we get to the other side of it. So how do we increase speed? Well, first of all, you want to think about lowering the terms that you have with your customers, maybe taking them from 30-day terms to 15-day terms, or in some cases, you have to get a deposit up front or a retainer up front before you'll go to work. Because the worst thing that any of us can do is work and not get paid. It's worse than not working and trying to figure out how you can provide other value-added services to your organization. If you work on something and don't get paid, or you deliver the product and don't get paid, it is worse than not working at all. Maybe think about personal guarantees, late fees, interest that you can put into contracts, changing your contracts up. Again, you'll see why those attorneys are so important. Maybe you want to think about a strong stop work plan, develop other really strong relationships with the internal accounting department to make sure that they know that you're there and that you care about them too. Make sure you're getting your invoices out quickly and on time. Maybe taking alternative forms of payment, digital forms of payment. Thinking about one of our restaurant clients, we talked about now taking Venmo or PayPal or one of those things as an alternative source of payment if people don't want to come in and use their credit card. These are all kinds of things that we want to think about as we're moving into this new space. And then also you got to find a good collections attorney. Make sure that you understand what your contract says and that if you have to go to that route, that your money is actually collectible. Here's another big important thing to think about, supply chain. If you're in a product business, and even if you're in a service business, which doesn't sound like you should worry about the supply chain, you need to worry about your customer supply chain. So you want to check both upstream and downstream supply chains. This is an international situation. On Friday, Prime Minister Modi of India told 1.2 billion people not to leave their homes. That cannot help but have a massive impact on supply chains around the world. You need to make sure that your supply chain is secure, both upstream and downstream. The other thing that you need to make sure of is that you've got the right inventory planning. If you have 1,000 SKUs, different products, what are the ones that are selling best? You want to make sure you do a really strong report that you understand what's selling, what the gross margins are, how quick your inventory is turning. Because if you have a ton of inventory, that's another form of cash. But if it doesn't sell, we call that dead inventory. That's sucking cash out of your business. At this point in time, cash is absolutely going to become king. And if it's tied up in inventory that's not selling, you're going to be in trouble. If, however, you're managing your inventory closely, making sure that all the stuff that you're selling and even products that might be increased volume in sales due to the current economic conditions, that you start to stock up on those things. This is also a great time with inventory planning to take advantage of your financial strength. If you're in a strong balance sheet position, this is the time to go and negotiate with some of your suppliers. Get discounts for buying in bulk, get discounts for buying now, where, again, there's very few people that might be buying. Maybe you're the only one. And now all of a sudden you can improve gross margins, lock in prices. And when we come out of this, you're that much better. Let's talk a little bit about the legal strategy. All right. As we go into this, there is an important legal strategy that we work with. And I want you to make sure that you are working with your business attorneys to really review every single one of your contracts. You should be working with at least your controller and CFO and your attorneys to do this. I can give you an example. There's this thing called force majeure. And force majeure is a part of a lot of contracts. It's an old French term that essentially means if there's something from the outside that causes the entire world to change, that contract might be abated or might be even null and void. What we found is even at TGG in some of our lease contracts, we found force majeure. And what this means is that, for example, in our lease in Orange County, we have a force majeure clause. And that means that while we don't have any people there and the government has forced us to not work because we're not essential, so we're quarantined at home, we can now abate rent for that period of time, which means we don't have to pay rent in that period of time. We've contacted the landlords, been very open about it, very transparent about it. But that took us reading the contract, that took our attorney interpreting the contract, and that took us having a proactive conversation with our landlords to make sure that we were doing this all above board and doing it the right way. So this is something that is this weird clause that many people have in contracts that has never been used because it's a thing of war and famine and, well, pandemics. So we're here. It's a time that we review all those contracts. The other thing you want to look for is termination rights in your contracts and then termination risks. Did you personally guarantee some of these contracts? Are there things that you absolutely cannot, that you have to perform on, and are other ones that you can go and negotiate on? Again, very important things to talk about. Next thing you want to think about are renegotiation rights and other contractual provisions that are in there that may not be applicable anymore. A lot of us rarely review contracts that we've been in for years anyway. This is a great excuse to start going in and looking at it. And what you might find is, wow, we've got this provision in our contract. We haven't done that in 5 years. And now all of a sudden you can have a conversation about it. You're going to find cost savings. You're going to find opportunities to, again, keep your business safe and make it a little bit better. All right, let's talk about this other fun subject, cash hoarding. It's time to become a hoarder if you're a business. And the way that we're going to do this is a couple of things. And it's not super complicated, but first of all, slow pay your accounts payable. Think about what vendors, again, you can push out and what vendors need to be paid right now. What we're finding is that even a lot of the utility companies are, if you go and talk to them, are willing to lower bills, defer bills, and it's things like that. The government is really trying to work on some of these things. So figure out who you can slow pay, who you have to pay, and who you can maybe even no pay, depending on what you've got going on in those contracts. The other side of this coin is obviously collecting your accounts receivable faster. So how do we go out and make sure that we collect our accounts receivable faster? Well, first and foremost, you've got to do some inventory planning. Sorry, let me take it back a step. I want you to manage inventory levels and manage your utilization. So when we talked about inventory before, what I was talking about is really making sure that that supply chain was stable. What I want to talk about with inventory now is managing inventory for cash. Again, cash in inventory is cash that you don't have in your bank account. What we want to think about is what are the proper inventory levels? Now, if you're in a service business and you don't have inventory, you got to manage utilization. Us at TGG, we're all hourly billed to our customers and to our clients. If you're in the engineering services world, an architect, if you're an attorney, any of those kinds of accountant service businesses, what you need to think about is managing utilization daily. What does that mean? That means daily timesheet entry. That means understanding what the project plans are moving forward and what the needs are for your clients moving forward. Same thing is happening on the inventory side if you're a product-based business, where you're managing the demand on the other side, managing POs from your customers, and then matching those up to POs that you would be sending out. But in the service business, you want to get to managing your utilization daily, at least weekly, because people are our biggest expense. And we need to make sure that we're taking care of them, but we also need to plan for that expense in the event something bad does happen with our business. Last thing you want to think about, or some other things you want to think about with cash hoarding, is potentially stop paying on some liabilities. I don't think that you want to shirk any of your responsibilities and just simply stop paying without any intent to ever repay. But some liabilities may put you out of business, and paying those might put you out of business. I have a story. I was talking to another individual in the business community who had a very high interest loan. They got that loan about 3 months ago. And that loan was supposed to be temporary in order to plan for some inventory. But that loan's at 30%. It's a $5,000 per week check, ACH, out of their bank account. And one of the first things I said is call them up and stop the ACH. It's not because we're not going to pay. It's not because we don't intend to pay eventually. But if you keep paying the $5,000 a week, you're going to go out of business incredibly fast. And then you won't be able to pay the rest of it off. So think big picture here when it comes to liabilities. And some of them you may have to stop paying in the short run. The next thing is a strategy that you can take a page out of Ford, Hewlett-Packard, Boeing, and a handful of other companies, that what they did at the end of last week was withdraw their entire lines of credit from the banks. So Ford, for example, drew a $20 billion line of credit out, took all the money out of the bank there so that they could be safe and they could have a cash parachute. Now, that's not necessarily what everybody needs to do, and you want to make sure you talk to your bankers and talk to your accountants and make sure you're talking to your lawyers to make sure you're not violating any covenants. But if you do that and you have the money, you can survive. This is exactly the same thing that Ford did in 2008, and it was one of the reasons they were one of the only automakers not to have to file bankruptcy during that time. So these are things for you as a smaller business that if you take these same tools and start to apply them to your business, you can have that cash parachute set aside if anything bad happens. What I found in 2008 was I had a deal with American Express, right, a $90,000 credit line. Well, I paid some of it off, almost all of it off, and the next day I got a letter from them taking my credit line from $90,000 to $1,500. They didn't call me, they didn't talk about it, they just cut my credit line instantly. And I saw all sorts of business owners have those same problems. So make sure you're safe, make sure you've got the cash, think about what that means in terms of drawing down on your credit line. Here's another big thing. Another expense for many of us is our leases. So what you want to do is really have proactive landlord discussions, and where it's appropriate, renegotiate leases or get them to the right terms. I'll give you an example. If you're a retail shop and you've been paying $8 a square foot, and there were 500 people that walked by your retail location every day, today there might be 50. There might be 5 people walking by your retail location. So talking to your landlord and having proactive real estate discussions is important. One of the things that we just renegotiated for a client with a landlord was a 6-month abatement of rent. Now, that doesn't mean that they ended up having to get out of the lease. And in fact, what we did is we extended the lease an extra year on the back end. But what we said was, hey, for the next 6 months, we're going to pay 20% of our normal rent. So you're going to get something, but you're going to get something on the back end, which is a promise that we're going to be here longer. That's going to add value to your building. But in the short run, at this retail location, there's no justification for us to pay the same amount of rent. And what they're finding is a lot of the businesses around them are just not paying at all or going out of business. If you're that shining light for that landlord and you're able to actually renegotiate and still have some financial strength, they're going to see you as an ally, and they're going to likely take your deal or consider your deal as you get into this. And that's the kind of thing that can really save your business at these times. The other thing that you should know is that we've got relationships at TGG with large national real estate firms that are expert in helping us guide us through these negotiation terms. So as you get to these points, feel free to reach out to us and we can put you in contact with people in your location that are really good and that can help you with reading your lease, looking at the options in your area, understanding the real estate market, and really make sure you get the best deal for yourself. All right. Bunch of other new stuff that's come out, and we have a moratorium on evictions. So when you're thinking about cost cutting, right now there's no moratorium on evictions for business owners, but we might get that. So really make sure that you're watching the news. We're going to be constantly putting blogs up on our YouTube channel, LinkedIn, on Instagram. Follow us on all that stuff. And as the rules change, we're going to be getting you more and more information, because they may get a moratorium on evictions for business owners as well, which again would be a very big plus. And what you're seeing is this is happening at the federal level, the state level, and even at the county level. So it's happening all across the board. Oh, that's another thing. Sorry, as I'm looking at the slides here, that we did that I thought was really a smart move. Our person who's in charge of facilities called actually our utilities and said, hey, we need to put our air conditioning on hold and our heating on hold for this period of time. And they taught us a little bit about how to do that. And now all of a sudden we're going to be saving $600-700 a month on something as simple as just turning off the air and heat while we're not there. So these are kinds of things that are little things that can really make a big difference. Again, we talked about talking with your bankers. I don't advocate doing anything kind of off the cuff, but do make sure you have a discussion with your bankers and talk about loans. Talk about the different loans that are that you have outstanding, and can they, go to an interest-only format? Can they renegotiate to help you get through these tough times? What you're going to find when you go talk to the bankers and the landlords and everyone else is they're going to take you very seriously if you have done that scenario planning that I talked about at the beginning. If you've actually forecasted out and said, here are the different benchmarks, here's the different times when we're going to have to cut costs. When you do that, they're going to take you very seriously, and they're going to think, okay, I got confidence because I can see their numbers and I know they have a plan. If you just go in and say, oh no, we're screwed, can you just have me not pay? They're not likely going to treat you very seriously, and they're actually going to put you in that bad pay customer pile. And they're probably going to look to figure out how to foreclose faster. So make sure you come in prepared. Make sure you come in with the facts, and what speaks to landlords and what speaks to bankers are numbers, financial numbers. So make sure you've got that forecast done. The other thing that we want to think about is the ever-changing state of the rules of small business loan repayments. So again, there was some stuff bantered about at the end of last week that said that there may be a moratorium on collections for federally backed loans. I haven't seen that come through yet, but it's something that we definitely have to watch for. Now let's go to stuff that's kind of standard cost-cutting stuff that you should always do. Ask for discounts. This is something that people in the past have been hesitant to do. Tell your accountants, tell the people paying the bills to just simply call and ask for a discount. If you get a 5% discount, that's still better than nothing. And it's at these kinds of times when you can actually get big discounts that can change contract terms for you and really improve your business in the long run. Next thing is proactive purchasing. Look, like I said, if you have cash, use it to your advantage. Take advantage of this situation. This is, these recessions and we may be going into a depression. These kind of things can be great positives for you, where you can start to take advantage of buying things at a discount, getting long-term contracts at a significant discount to what you're paying today. There are going to be a tremendous number of unemployed people out there over the next few weeks. You can upgrade your talent and start to bring on people onto your team that when we get out of this, you're in a much better spot. So if you have cash, make sure you're using that to your advantage. Then let's take a look at some small items that can be turned into big things. Things like credit card fees, loan fees, bank fees, insurance costs. One of the things that I put that asterisk on your crisis team with the insurance agents there is because these insurance agents are getting bombarded by questions of, hey, what about my business interruption insurance? Can I get paid for my revenue that's gone down because of the virus? What I'm hearing from our insurance folks is that's a big no. You're not going to get payment for that. But what you can do is talk about all your other insurances. If you're not in your space, if you have fewer employees, you need less insurance. If you're not traveling and your people aren't on the road, you need different insurance. If you're changing your service or product mix, you might have different insurance that you can reduce these insurance costs. So make sure you're having proactive conversations. And again, we have some great resources for insurance. If you want our expertise on this, please reach out to us and I'll put you in contact with the insurance folks that can help you figure out strategies for cost reduction with insurance. Next thing is think about payroll taxes. I'm going to give you two suggestions here. First, a moratorium may be coming on payroll taxes. This is another thing that's been kicked around in Congress. I'm really hopeful that they do this because it would help us preserve jobs. I think it would help us preserve employees if they said we're going to do a moratorium on payroll taxes for a while. I'm not sure that's going to happen or not. Something worth looking at. But here is something you should definitely do. If your business is in jeopardy, there is no reason, and you're in a pass-through entity, they're an LLC, an S-Corp, a partnership, one of those, what you need to do is stop paying yourself a salary if you're the sole business owner, or if you have a partner, you and your partner, because you're eating up payroll taxes and income taxes that otherwise could be used to help fund your business. In times like this, in times of crisis, what the IRS says is that you have to pay yourself a reasonable salary. Well, right now, what's reasonable? What's reasonable is saving your business. So if you are paying yourself $10,000 a month as a salary, pay yourself $10,000 a month as a distribution, stop paying payroll taxes, stop paying income taxes on that, and put that money towards saving jobs, saving business, buying inventory. Make sure you save your business first. Because if you're continue just to pay yourself a salary and run your business into the ground, you will have paid the IRS and you will have paid the franchise tax boards and the state boards who are collecting all these taxes, all this money that you could have used to save your business. So one of the things that I'm doing is instantly stop paying yourself a salary and save those payroll taxes. Next thing you want to think about is office supplies. Look at your technology contracts. Things like internet service. In our building, we had very fast internet service because we're working all the time and working on them remotely. Well, this is something that we don't need anymore. I don't have anybody in the building. So we've called the internet service provider. We were able to lower our bandwidth needs and in fact, save about $6 and always be looking at these things as ways to save money in these kinds of times. And again, work with your accounting team to do this. These are things that a proactive accounting team will help you get through. Now, if you're talking about freight, this is another place that's always negotiable. Get out there, talk about it, and really get in front of that. All right, I talked about this earlier. I talked about utilization for service businesses, but I want to take it a step further. Utilization is not enough. If your people are really, really busy and you don't collect on any of that money, you're going to be out of business. Today, you have to not only look at daily utilization rates, you have to start looking at daily realization rates. Realization is collecting that money that your people worked on. This is a service business thing, but it's the same thing that you could do if you're in a product business. If you're in a product type business, make sure that the products, the people that you're selling to have the capability of paying you. I can't say it enough. There is nothing worse that you can do in business than work and not get paid. It'd be much better not to work, understand you have capacity, and then go out and put that capacity to use somewhere else. But do not work for free. Make sure that the people you are working for can and will pay you. All right, now let's talk about some really big cost-cutting items. We've talked about all the little ones and all the things you can kind of do to snip the edges around. Now we're gonna have to talk about some big ones. And the first thing that I wanna do is talk about increasing accountability at your business. This is something that every one of us wants to do. I've never heard from a business owner, oh, I have plenty of accountability. Don't worry, I don't need any extra accountability. No, we've all had accountability problems with employees in the past. So this is the time not to turn into Big Brother and micromanage. That's not what accountability is. This is a time to take subjective metrics and make them objective metrics. Run your business by the numbers and run accountability for your employees by the numbers. This increase in accountability is going to force some people to frankly leave. It's going to force other people to show you which are the first ones that you have to let go of in a layoff. And then it's going to show you which ones are your rock stars who rise to the occasion and get in this boat with you and row in the exact same direction and say, we're all in this together, let's go win. By increasing accountability, you are going to figure out a better visibility into your business and understand who is on the team and who needs to be taken off the team. Then the other thing that I really want you to think about is looking for outsourcing alternatives. For cost cutting, these are big items. Full-time employees have lots of taxes, lots of overhead, lots of insurance, lots of benefits with them. Consider outsourcing in these times. TGG, we're here for you to outsource your accounting costs. We are 40 to 60% of the cost of a full-time employee. Think about what that means when you get great data at 40 to 60% the cost of a full-time employee. Do you really need that person sitting next to you? I know that's a challenging thing to talk about, but we've got to talk about survival. And so when you're thinking about surviving, think about outsourcing. Other places that you can clearly outsource are things like IT, things like HR outsourcing, things like your employee compliance. All these things, think about outsourcing to save money and reduce costs. Not just to save time, but to actually reduce costs. Next thing, and this is, again, we're getting into some tough conversations here, is make sure that you set boundaries on when you're going to begin layoffs. If your business is down 50%, are you going to begin layoffs then? What about 75%? What about 25%? At what point, make sure that you're sitting there with your org chart and looking at the overall org chart to say, okay, this is where we're going to have to cut if we get to that spot. These are challenging things to think about, but really work with your accounting team to figure out what financial impact that's going to be. Work with your attorneys to make sure that you've got the proper HR support there and you're doing it the right way. And then also make sure that you're communicating with your team in these tough times so that they all understand where you're at and where the business is at. Because look, sometimes, it's really important to make sure that we save the business at all costs. And even if that means we have to have a couple of people to get laid off or furloughed or other things that you can do, because you don't necessarily just have to lay people off. You can go in and furlough folks and say, hey, we're going to go to part-time. I saw a lot of that in the last recession that was very positive. Some people want to work from home and not just work from home, but maybe stay at home. Maybe they can only work 20 hours a week now because they've got kids at home and they've got different priorities. These are all things to have those proactive conversations, because what you'll find is your employees are willing to work there for you as long as you're behind them. And as long as they know they have a safe place and a strategy to save that business in the long run. All right, we talked a little bit about insurance. We talked about when you do have fewer employees, you got to adjust workers' comp, look at reviewing your general liability, look at E&O and specialty insurance, all for cost cutting, because these are big line items in places where you might be able to save a ton of money. Whew. All right, that was a lot of tough stuff. I don't know about you guys, but I feel like there are some significant benefits from this whole thing. And let's talk about some of the fun stuff, because I'll show you one of the fun things right now is I look like I'm really professional, but I'm actually wearing board shorts. And there are some benefits to working from home. I get to have lunch at home every day. I get to work out when I want. There are some benefits to this, and we got to find some benefits. Here's some real serious ones. I know board shorts aren't that serious, but we got to have some fun in this thing. The first thing that you want to think about is finding new markets or services that may be in high demand. Think about things that you're doing that may shift in this marketplace. Like we talked about the hotel business that is now turning into a makeshift hospital and a makeshift emergency spot for the homeless and other people. So these are the kinds of things that you can do to start shifting your business into things that may be more beneficial. Elon Musk was talking yesterday about collaborating and turning some of his assembly line stuff into a ventilator assembly line. These are the kinds of things that forward-thinking business leaders do. And so make sure that you're thinking about that stuff with your business as well. There are some significant other benefits. Look, new technologies are going to come out here that are going to make this a new workforce. You may need a lot less office space as you come back to work, because what you might find is that distance learning has turned into, we found new technologies, new ways to work that are actually really helping, because working from home, or at least at a distance, is the new norm. And that has some significant benefits to efficiency. And ultimately, look, if we're saving an hour in the car every day but not having to commute, that's an hour of productivity we get back and that we can use with our employees to, again, encourage them to live. Maybe half of that is go do some exercise, and half of that is let's work a little bit harder at our business. So you might have lower future space needs. You've got to have increased worker safety and productivity, and again, an increase in technology adaptation that you may not have seen had we not been forced into the situation. You might have less mileage reimbursements. I know in our firm we're going to have that. You might have better objective metrics like we talked about, fewer subjective ways to look at this. You might have people who then all of a sudden start to feel better about the job that they're doing because you've identified what their exact job roles and responsibilities are and you're holding them to them objectively. You might have weeded out some of the poor performers, and now, because we're going to be in a high unemployment environment where we were in a low unemployment environment, you may upgrade your talent significantly. The other things that you're going to do is think about what you can do to continue to create culture. If you're in the manufacturing and people are working far apart, what can you do to make people still feel like they're a part of the team? What if they're working remotely and everybody's working from home like we are? What can you do to make them feel like they're still a part of the bigger group? Well, first of all, make sure they know the mission. Why are you doing this? What is the mission? Our mission is to make business owners' lives better. I have told my entire accounting team, we are the financial first responders. we are here to save small business, and we've got to get out there and hustle and work because we know how to get them numbers, get them information, and interpret it to help save businesses and save jobs. What is your mission? Do your employees feel it? Do they know it? This is really important to keep that culture going when they may be working remotely or working in an impaired way. Make sure that they know where the arrow is headed and where they're a part of it. Here's another big benefit of a slowdown. You're going to have fewer competitors. You're going to have a lot fewer competitors. You're going to have better internal processes and procedures, and you're going to have better accounting and accountability with a focus on the mission. You're going to have overall better employee morale. You're going to have a better employee workforce. Again, you can let go of underperformers, and there will be a lot of people who really like this new accountability, this new objective accountability, and frankly, the rest will leave, and that's okay. So it's not all bad. Businesses are going to survive in every industry. Your business needs to be that business. We're here to help in any way we can to provide accurate and timely numbers. We've got our contact information here. Now I want to open it up for questions. And to the extent that people want to ask questions in the Zoom, you can ask the questions in the Zoom chat, and I'll stay here as long as we need to get those questions answered. So I'm going to end here with a couple other quick slides, just so that we know where we are, and then I'll open it up for questions. So again, all these questions we'll get through, and then let's see. Yep, that's it. So that's us. Again, continue to follow us on YouTube, LinkedIn, Instagram. We'll have updates there. Facebook, Twitter, and our YouTube channel always will be updated with these videos. Let's see, what am I going to do here? I'm going to stop sharing my screen now, and I'm going to go to questions, any kind of questions and answers on the chat. Let's see what we got here. All right, I'm going to start at the top. So if I don't get to your questions quick enough, we're also recording this entire webinar. So if for some reason we're missing a question or anything like that, I'm going to send this out to anyone who wants it. We're going to put it on our YouTube channel and put it on LinkedIn so you can rewatch it or send it to other people as you need. Or if you've got to go, I'll make sure that we answer all these questions while I'm here, and then you can reach out to me separately or whatever you want on this. Let's see here. We represent a lot of landlords, and many cities have imposed restrictions on evictions, both residential and commercial. What do we do on that? Okay, there's a good question. So the big question here is, what do you do if you're a landlord? Because obviously you're kind of one of those dominoes that hits pretty near the end. The first thing that you need to do is make sure that you check all of your contracts and know, because you might be on the other side of that force majeure issue. Make sure that you understand exactly where you stand with that. Then you want to go and look at your loans and what are your fixed costs? How much cash do you have on hand to be able to withstand this? And begin to immediately start to talk to your bankers and others about how you can modify loans, stop paying on loans, et cetera, and then have proactive conversations. The best landlords that I've seen in this are the ones that are reaching out to the tenants and reaching out to have those conversations so that they can figure out, again, who are the A, AA, and AAA tenants that are either not going to pay at all, pay something, or tenants that you know are going to pay no matter what. All right, let's see here. More questions. Based on potential supply chain problems, I have increased safety stock. That's a good comment. Mark Robinson made this comment, and this is, again, assessing your supply chain risks. If you need more inventory on hand, that's great. We always talk about inventory utilization and warehouse utilization as two sides of the same coin. Whereas you have, on the one hand, you don't want a ton of money in inventory because that's cash. So you want to keep your inventory turns as fast as possible. But on the other hand, if you have warehouse space and you're only filling 50% of it, well, you're wasting 50% of your warehouse rent. So this may be a time, if you're in a strong financial position, to take advantage of buying and stocking up, especially on good selling items. But in order to do that, you really have to analyze the sale of each product and understand gross margin by product, sell-through by product, and inventory turn by product so that you can maximize that stocking. You're not stocking up on stuff that maybe won't sell. Let's see. What else do we have? make sure your line of credit doesn't have a personal guarantee or be prepared to take that risk. This is another good comment by Gabe. Most lines of credit, especially to small business, have personal guarantees on them. So likelihood of you having one is pretty high. That said, again, work with your bankers because this is a time when they're going to be eager. Again, the FDIC and regulators are trying to push them to work with you. So the first one in is probably the best one. You know, when they come up with these $500 billion of loans, which I'm looking at the news here as we're talking, it looks like Congress is going to pass that today or early morning tomorrow. What we've got to do is get in line first because I don't have any idea how the Fed is going to get out $500 billion of loans to some 15 million businesses with the staff they have today. So make sure you're working with your internal accounting departments. Make sure you're getting out there as fast as possible because these personal guarantees may be swapped out. We may see loan forgiveness. A lot of that stuff has been talked about. So just make sure, again, make sure you're thinking about some of that stuff. Okay, here we go. What do you recommend for self-employed business owners and sole proprietors? All right, so self-employed business owners, sole proprietors, people who are filing on a Schedule C, the first thing that I would recommend is the same stuff we just talked about. Anything that's good practice for a big business, believe it or not, is probably good practice for a small business, and we can actually take a lot of cues from what big businesses are doing, whether it's that hoarding cash, drawing down on the lines of credit, making sure they have a cash parachute, working on pricing, all those kinds of things. Just because you have a sole proprietorship doesn't mean you should do anything different. You really want to focus on all those little things that are going to make a big difference in your business. Let's see. Oh, from Rob Flanagan. Are you catching some good waves? Good question, Rob. I did go surfing on Sunday. I broke up my day and got a little water time, which was good. In San Diego, they've closed the beaches. San Diego City has closed the beaches. San Diego County has not yet. So yeah, this afternoon I plan on taking an hour and a half and getting in the water and doing some water therapy for all this. And I would encourage all of you guys to do the same thing: is find whatever you need to do to take some time away and de-stress and focus your brain, whatever it is. Take that. All right, let's see, another question. Matt, this is Sohail. Sohail, thank you for being on this. My question is, how do I hold people accountable when they are working from home? I have some employees who are doing a great job. I have others who haven't delivered on the milestones. They say they're trying to juggle work and kids at home. I'm trying to be accommodating, but deliverables are down significantly. And this isn't an uncommon problem, Sohail. This is something that all of us are facing. So let me give you a couple things that I think would really help. The first one is, put structure in place. Again, what we at TGG did is we have a 7:30 standing meeting that is mandatory that everybody needs to attend, and we just do breathing. So it's not a meeting for business, but what it is it's a meeting that says this is something you can depend on. We are all in this together, and people who are frankly not showing up are getting phone calls from us, and they may not be people that are right for our team. Because if they don't understand that in this time we have to band together and we all have to do this as a team, they may not be right for us as a team. And again, you're going to see unemployment going through the roof. So don't feel like all of a sudden you have this fear that you have to keep bad people on your team. What you need to use this as a time to be confident that there are a lot of people that can come and do a great job for you. Secondarily, make objective metrics. So it sounds like you have them, but if they're not delivering on milestones, hold them accountable. Go out and find the next person who's going to do it. Third, be patient. It sounds to me like you have some workers who are trying to adjust to a work-at-home environment and they're dealing with kids and other things like that. Maybe these are the kinds of people that instead of having such big milestones as they had when they were full-time and they had childcare, maybe you take their milestones and their pay correspondingly down to 60% of their previous milestones. Try to come up with something that works for them. Treat them like humans, treat them like individuals, but hold them accountable. Don't let them walk all over you, and don't let them just take, this coronavirus as the new excuse for not holding up their end of the bargain. If you're paying them, they need to do the job. If they want to do a smaller job, pay them a smaller amount. Be respectful, but hold them accountable with real objective metrics. All right, that was a good one. Let's see here. Next question, where do you apply? This is John, where do you apply for those $500 billion in Fed loans? Well, they haven't come out yet. That's what's being proposed by the Congress. So as soon as they come out, I will put out a webinar or a blog post on exactly how we apply for them, because I think absolutely you want to get in as quickly as possible. Let's see. You recommended moving owners to distributions, but they aren't contributing to a 401k. How do you respond to that? That's a great point. When you get to this, so what I've done with TGG is I've taken my salary down to my base just to get my insurance paid for my family so that we're safe and secure with my health insurance. But other than that, I'm taking my salary down to zero. That means I'm not participating in the 401k, and that is it's a negative of what I'm doing. But I'd rather not participate in my 401k and make sure that my business survives than the alternative. So when you're thinking about these tough decisions, you want to think about preservation of cash. That doesn't mean that I'm not looking at investing and taking other cash and investing in the stock market, but it means I might have to suspend my 401k until the end of the year. Now with the 401k, the great news is you can suspend that, and then as a business owner, you can actually contribute to it at the end of the term. So you could actually contribute to this before next April 15th. So you've got a lot of time to make that up. So by suspending it now, you may not get some of the bounce in the market. You might lose some of that, but you'll be saving some cash. And then ultimately you can recontribute when your business is at a position that you feel like it's appropriate to do that. Let's see here. Next one. Like Congress giving, let's see what this says. Sorry guys, lots of questions coming in, which is great. I'm not sure what this one was. It says, like Congress giving N95's coverage to all units made, should we public be pushing for Congress to legislate that business interruption insurance coverage include COVID-19? I think that's a great thing to push. You can talk to the Chamber of Commerce, which is still advocating that everybody stay home. So start to talk to your legislators and people. I would love to see, to me, this is kind of a classic case of business interruption insurance. But as you know, insurance companies, if they had that, they'd have to be backed by the federal government because every business would be applying for it and insurance companies would go out of business in an instant. So typically these kinds of things are not covered by insurance, but we may see that through the federal government. So that's a really good point. All right, from Katie. One of our leases has a clause stating that we must still pay rent with force majeure, but there seems to be a clause regarding destruction and casualty that might get us out of rent, ? Any precedents that you're aware of on how to discuss with the landlord who in parentheses is a lawyer? This is a fun one. Again, this is where you want to have your crisis team in place. I would want to review that lease with the lawyer and have that lawyer weigh in on how could you interpret that clause. I'm not sure just because I haven't seen it, but I'm sure there are ways that you could interpret that clause that could help. Maybe perhaps more importantly is talking to the landlord and trying to get them out of being a lawyer and just being proactive with them and saying, let's be realistic about what's going on with your other tenants in the building or your other tenants in the facilities. And how can I help you achieve your goals? My favorite way to negotiate is not to, look, I know what I want. My favorite way is not to tell somebody what I want, but instead to ask them what their goals are. Really figure out what they're trying to get and how is this landlord going to survive? Maybe try to put yourself in that position. How is this landlord going to survive if 80% of their tenants go out of business and stop paying rent? How can you help support them? How can you make sure that they're okay in this time? And then obviously get what you want out of it. Reduction in rent, rent abatement, any of those kind of things. Maybe longer lease terms on the end, like I said, we negotiated this last week. All right, from Brooke. We are 4 owners with 4 staff, and as a high-end travel agency, our business is grinded to a halt. What's tough is that we don't know when revenue will return, possibly September, but who knows? We are waiting for stimulus, but considering reducing our employee salary by 40% and having them focus on internal database building. An alternative could be furlough, 1 of 4, and give 30% to other 3. Thoughts on this? Brooke, first of all, I want to congratulate you on being proactive. This is exactly the line of thinking you need. What I would do, though, is start to financially model that. Look at it by the numbers because the numbers will help you make that decision. You've got to understand how much cash you have, what your runway looks like, and when you need to start making these choices, and when these choices have to be made in order to save your business. Because I'm not sure travel is going to come back in September. I think I would want to plan in your business as what happens if travel comes back in September? What happens if it doesn't come back until January? What happens if it doesn't come back until the following March? So that you had 3 alternative scenarios to really look at all of this stuff. And by the way, your employees are going to appreciate this because you can talk to them about it. And yeah, a furlough is better than being fired. And I love the fact that you're trying to move them into more value-added work. What are other things, what are other skills that they have and other ways they maybe And in the travel business, Brooke, you might be one of those that's just in a very tough spot. But are there things that you could offer, services or other programs you could offer that could bring in revenue to people that would be valuable in these kinds of times? You know, a lot of people are going through weddings, or I know, you know, other celebrations and things like that that get put on hold. Maybe you can start to facilitate some of that stuff that's virtual or remote, or ways that they can do it in ways that everybody can still celebrate. These are going to be new opportunities that we've got to just get super creative with. All right, let's see. From KD. In California, what are the employee benefits available so that when we furlough or lay off or fire, are there differences? So yeah, there are pretty big differences between furlough, layoffs, and firing. And government benefits that are going to be available if this looks anything like the last recession. So firing is going to be the most sort of challenging for employees. They're going to be able to file for unemployment insurance, but again, how they get it and how they get it quickly is going to be tough. The unemployment, we talked about those Connecticut stats at the very beginning of this. I think we're going to see somewhere between 5 and 10 million people filing for unemployment by Thursday. So how does the unemployment department get checks out to those people on a fast basis? If you have to fire or lay off people, immediately give them resources to get to the unemployment department and get their checks. That's something that you can do to support them even in these challenging times. The other thing that you want to do is work with your benefits provider, your insurance agents, and your HR attorneys, HR consultants to make sure you're following all the rules and laws. Just because we're in a crazy time doesn't mean somebody still isn't going to sue or get upset, whatever. You want to make sure you're doing all this stuff right and treating people with respect. And then the last thing is obviously with employee benefits, there's things like COBRA that they can continue to take advantage of. And if they go to part-time, maybe you can say, listen, I'm going to cut your salary by 50%, but we're going to lower the hurdles under which you can get health insurance, or lower the hurdles under which you can participate in the 401k, or do things like that. So you can give them some wiggle room and get creative and give them some benefits. Because I think ultimately all of us as business owners really care about our people, really want them to do well, but also understand that we have to survive, and that sometimes we might have to furlough or let go of people in order for the entire business to remain in business. All right, let's see. Temporary layoffs of key employees, but keeping their medical insurance. That's from Mark, question mark. Paying their COBRA, question mark. Can they still get unemployment? So if you take them to temporary status, they cannot get unemployment. But again, these are the things that we were just talking about. Maybe lowering the barriers for them to help get health insurance. Maybe you providing them with some sort of a bonus plan to be able to retain health insurance if they ultimately can't, because you can't change the terms of eligibility, those kind of things. Get creative. Work with your accounting team, work with your HR attorney, work with your benefits folks to make sure that you're following all the laws. But again, I love the comments here, because it shows that as a business community, we can get pretty creative. Let's see. Gabe says, distributions to equity holders in a period of insolvency can be clawed back by bankruptcy trustees. Be careful. Gabe, that's a good point. If you're considering filing bankruptcy, you immediately need to talk to a bankruptcy attorney. Not like the week you're going to file, but like months in advance. So make sure that you're working with your accounting people and your attorneys to know exactly where you are on that, because there are a lot of preferential payments that can be clawed back in an insolvency, and you'll want to make sure you're conscious of that. Eric says, how about virtual vacation rooms for your travel business? You can use a combination of props and virtual reality. Hey, you know, I love this, Eric. Thank you for putting that out there. This is exactly the kind of forum we need, where we're all helping each other come up with cool stuff. I know I watched a friend of mine actually got engaged last week, and she held a virtual engagement party, and it was hilarious. Last week for St. Patrick's Day, we held a virtual happy hour with green beer. Like, you know, you can find ways to have fun in this and stay connected. And so, Eric, thank you. That's awesome. Let's see here. EDD has a work share program allowing a reduction in hours for employees and getting partial UI benefits while staying employed. That's good news. Again, focus on that crisis team, because these kind of things are going to pop up and the world's going to change real fast. So as it changes, you need to be aware of those things. We're going to do our best to get all the information out that we can, but I'm sure we're missing some of those. Let's see. Could you provide more information on the SBA loans for disaster relief? Sure. So this is, we have a couple people in our office, again, who are expert at this. I'm not the expert, but I'll give you the general theory here. The theory here is, in a disaster time, if you're experiencing revenue decline, profit decline, you're eligible for some disaster loan relief. It's a 3-step process to get it. Again, our folks know this very well, but what I would encourage you to do is get in the queue fast. You've got to fill out your application quickly and get in that line, because it's going to be huge. And they don't have the staff to really fulfill on this. Again, they're supposed to turn these things around within 3 to 6 weeks. I think that's going to stretch to 6 to 12 weeks and maybe even longer than that. So you really want to be prepared that you may not get it if you're in the long end of the line, but it doesn't hurt to show up and try to apply. I think most of our businesses should be thinking about that and proactively applying. Let's see. Cash. Is it true in California you can only furlough for a maximum of 10 days? That's a great question, and I unfortunately do not know the answer to that. What I'm going to do, though, is I'm going to get a response from our HR folks, and I'll post that response for you to get you an answer, because I don't know that answer. Let's see. How do you apply for the SBA loans? You can go to the SBA. You can also reach out to us and we can help you apply, but they're called disaster loans. And on the SBA's website, there's a link for how you apply to them. SBA disaster will require personal financial statements. Yes, that's true. Be prepared with that info. Yeah, that's absolutely right. Let's see, what else do we have? Anybody else got any other questions they want to throw out there? Okay. As I said, let me put up my, let me see if I can share screen one more time here. And I'll put our contact information up in here. Look, this is challenging times, but I'm really impressed as to how everybody's kind of bonding together, and even just on this webinar, starting to really provide advice to each other. So we want to be, kind of a forum for this sort of stuff. If you guys think this is a great idea and you want us to just open this up as a forum in the future to maybe, I don't know, once a week, business owners just get together and ask a bunch of questions and give a bunch of answers, shoot me an email. Send an email to this info@TGG Accounting. You can shoot me a personal email. You can find my email on our website at tgg-accounting.com. Anything like that, we'd love to hear from you on what we can do to better support you. We are very scared at this time because it's an incredibly unprecedented and challenging time for business, but we are also incredibly optimistic because this is the time when you can shine, when you can show the rest of the business community your leadership. You can show your employees how to get through these tough times. Somebody's going to win, and we want to make sure that it's you. So if there's anything we can do to support you, let us know. Otherwise, thank you all very much for joining us. We really appreciate the opportunity to serve you. Thanks again.
Matt, Jess is here. I think there's 3 new questions that actually popped in right at the end as you were going through that.
Oh.
Starting
but that was a great ending. We have to stop there. It was a great
ending. I'm sorry, and I completely threw you off here.
Come on, Jess.
I'm sorry. Looks like Eric started with Eric A. You scroll up at 11:01.
All right, let's see. Caitlin says, oh, there are a bunch of them that came in. Thank you. Patrick, I have multiple commercial properties where a very large tax bill is due. Property tax due next month. Any relief or late pay? So it sounds like this is something that, again, I would work with your attorneys. I will tell you, I own a commercial building that TGG occupies, and I was talking with my attorney last night, and my plan is not to pay property taxes for a little while, to suspend property taxes, because again, they're not going to come in and foreclose on the property. It's just going to put a lien on your property and you'll end up having to pay the property taxes later. But if you're trying to conserve cash, this is another way to do it. And I would tell you that there may be relief from the government. I don't know that to be true, but I do know that you can probably suspend paying property taxes without tremendous negative consequences, at least in the short run, not in the long run, but in the short run. Let's see. Caitlin says, what if our 2019 tax docs won't be done soon? Will that affect our application for the SBA loans? It may. Again, I don't think that should stop you. Get your personal financial statements in there. Get everything in that you can, but it may hold you up a little bit. So maybe push on your CPAs. This is, again, that part of that crisis team and making sure you've got everybody in there to do that. Bonnie put a link in our, thank you, Bonnie. Bonnie is one of our CFOs, and she's put a link in the comments to the SBA Disaster Assistance Program so that you guys can better understand that. Bruce, I know, is on here as well. Bruce is another one of our guys that's expert in this space. Also Andrew and Scott, Ryan, Larson, all guys that are really, really sharp on this stuff. Let's see. Glenn put out there, LA County announced they plan to waive late charges for property taxes. See, there we go. That's the community helping each other. So that's great news. Thank you for putting that out, Glenn. I appreciate that. Let's see. If your revenue is not yet affected, but you anticipate that it will be affected, can you apply for these SBA disaster loans? Yes. Jump in. Jump in with the anticipation that it might be affected, and all they can tell you is no. But it's better to get in the queue and try than not to try at all. It's good questions. All right, Jess, did I get everybody? Can I go back? I'm not going to do that
You're
clip.
good.
I lost it all. We're going to go back and replay that. That's about as good as it can. No, I appreciate everybody being here. Thank you. And like I said, send me any kind of comments, feedback, etc. And just love the fact that our whole business community is really bonding together to try to make this stuff work. Because again, some businesses are going to succeed, and I want to make sure it's yours. So let us know if there's anything we can do to help you. Thank you all very much, and hopefully we'll see you all soon.